Hey guys, Charles here. Let's see if we can do some of these FRQs, or at least just sort of get familiar with them. Ooh, for inflation, right? What it looks like when they're asking you for, or at least starting off, FRQ, usually your first FRQ, but not necessarily, um, for what we have if we have an inflationary gap. So there's only been one, two, three of these that I could find. Obviously, there might be more, but it's pretty straightforward. We've got a long run vertical aggregate supply curve. We've got an upward sloping short run aggregate supply curve, downward sloping aggregate demand, price level on the vertical, real GDP on the horizontal. We could also call this output if we wanted to. But you and I should always write real GDP. We're going to have a price level stable. Let's call it PLE. Let's call this YF or YE. Doesn't matter. Stands for incomes at full employment or output at full employment. We're pretty golden there. Let's just do these. Again, there's not many of these. Most of your time is going to spend making sure you recognize how they ask us about a recession, not an inflation. But let's see if we can do it together. Assume the United States economy is in, oops, I didn't even show us. This is equilibrium. Obviously, our inflationary gap is anytime aggregate demand shifts to the right, we have an inflationary, what we call gap or scenario, or whatever you want to call it. We can see that the price level has gone up. Easy enough. We can see the output has increased. Let's call that Y1. Output's gone up. And we know that if price level or if we know output goes up, unemployment has to go down. More people are working, so that implies that unemployment fell. This is what we call also a hot economy. Think of it as a hot economy. Prices are high, output's really high, the economy's booming. Easy enough? All right. Number one, assume the United States economy is in short run macro equilibrium and an output level greater than potential. Now, you've never heard that before. Output that is greater than what we could have called as full employment, or we could have called as our potential real GDP, or we could have called, like they did, potential output. All of these mean the same things, right? When output is greater than full employment, or potential real GDP or potential output, we definitely have an inflationary gap. Again, you have to know the language or it becomes a little more complicated on the test. So let's see if we could just draw it. You and I already know what we're looking for here. We've got a long run aggregate supply, short run aggregate supply. Now, I'm going to draw my short run equilibrium to the right of your long run aggregate supply. I don't need a aggregate demand curve. Could I put it there and then shown that shifting? Absolutely. Do I need it? No, I don't think so. So let's get rid of that and let's just say this is our starting point, price level, real GDP, aggregate demand. We're starting at that price level right there. They want us to call it PL1. We've got that output right there. That's Y1. This is where we're starting. We're starting in an inflationary gap because of the way they asked us to start. And then they want full employment output, which would be YF. Full employment output is always under your long run average supply curve. Easy enough. There we go. So this is our A, done. We drew our aggregate demand, our short run average supply, our long run, check, check, check. We know where our current real output and price level are. This is current equilibrium. That's our price level, PL1, Y1, check, check. We've done our full employment output, YF, check, and now we'll do B just for a little extra giggle. Assume government spending increases by 100 billion on your graph in Part A. Show the short run effect of a change in government spending on equilibrium output and price level. Label it Y2, PL2. So again, we know our aggregate demand. The formula is C plus I plus G plus X minus N. Sometimes that can be different, but it's net exports. Government spending went up, so we know aggregate demand has to go up and shift to the right. That's going to give us a higher. We went further into an inflationary gap. So price PL2, Y2. Why would they do that? Maybe elections are coming up and they wanted to spend more money so people would vote for whoever's currently in office, right? Those are the kinds of reasons that this happens. We're in a hot economy and more spending is going on? Absolutely. Okay, that's done. That was from 2022, pretty straightforward and easy. Let's look at 2021. Assume Smithland is in short-run equilibrium at a level of output that exceeds full employment. Same thing, output is greater than full employment, right? Soon as we see that, they could have said output is greater than potential real GDP, right? They could have said output is greater than potential output. Easy enough. This would be remiss of me if I didn't say what they like to say about, and not so much for the inflation, but if I had told you that unemployment, or let's call it actual unemployment, was less than our natural rate of unemployment, that's a strange way, right? Actual unemployment is less than our natural rate. They do like to ask this sometimes. So we just have to know this is code for an inflationary gap, just like this is code for an inflationary gap, right? Let's see if we can make sense of those by just drawing it. They want us to draw aggregate demand, aggregate supply long run. They want us Y1, PL1, and YF. Easy enough, right? So long run, done. Short run aggregate supply curve. Remember, it's to the right. I'm making this short run equilibrium over here to the right of long run. That gives us that inflationary gap. Same thing as usual. PL1, don't forget your PLs. They'll take a point, or your real GDPs. They'll take a point if you don't do it. This is Y1, this is YF. So we are in our inflationary gap. Recognize, again, I said this is a hot economy. The price level from full employment, right? And we know what happened here. We know aggregate demand shifted to the left or the right. We don't need to show it. So we can just draw that aggregate demand 1 right there and show that inflationary. We know that the price level went up in an inflationary gap. We know output went up very, very high, and we know unemployment is very low because it's a hot economy, meaning that actual unemployment is less than your natural rate of unemployment. Down here is your natural rate of unemployment. At full employment output, that is you at full employment, which means that is your natural rate of unemployment. That's a little weird the first time you see it. And obviously, if more people are working, that means actual unemployment is less than full employment, or your natural rate there. A lot of things to remember. And lots of it is just word language. Once you know the language, you're pretty golden with these. Just takes a little practice to get it in your head what they mean by it. And after you've done 20 or 30 of them, you should be golden. That was a bit of a joke. All right, let's see if we can do B. Assume Smithland's government can cut taxes. So when taxes go down, my question to you would be, is that expansionary or contractionary? So we should recognize, and I'm going to move this because I want to sort of write this out a little bit, is that if taxes go down, this is really the same thing as government spending going up, in that they're both expansionary fiscal policies. So they could have said the same thing as, they could have just said government spending goes up or taxes go down. Both of these would have caused the same effect. I know consumption is going to increase. If government spending goes up, all of that money is going to flow out into the economy, become somebody's income, and they start spending it. If taxes go down, well, what do you think happens to people's disposable incomes? If they're paying less taxes, don't they have more disposable income? If it goes up, if they do have more disposable income, wouldn't that make their consumption go up? Which drives up aggregate demand, which drives up the price level, which drives up real GDP, which drives up output. It is expansionary, right? So all of these are going up, right? It's expansionary, and then we know unemployment has to go down because output and unemployment are always in the opposite directions. So they cut taxes. We know it's going to shift aggregate demand to the right. We're going to have a higher, let's call it Y2, output, and we're going to have a higher price level, BL2. Easy enough. Show the arrows. Some teachers don't like them on the inside. I like them on the inside. Show that aggregate demand shifting to the right. Did they ask us to explain it? No. So we didn't really have to do any of this. All we had to do was show it. No big deal. All right, let's do the last inflationary one here. Again, we're operating above full employment. For that one, I will show what we know as equilibrium. We're going to start there, even though we don't really need to. Oops, let's make that a little, let's clean that up a little bit. All right, so here we are, aggregate demand, real GDP, go away, price level. We are at, remember now, this point right here is YF on the bottom. The Y stands for national incomes, full employment. At full employment, everybody's working, not everybody. You know, we still have structural and frictional, but let's just say it's full employment. So that spot right there we could call full employment. Again, we need to refer to it as our natural rate of unemployment if we need to. We also know that it is potential output or potential real GDP. We could also know that this whole graph is our long-run equilibrium graph showing our economy in long-run equilibrium. Lots of things and different words they can use to try to confuse you. Don't let them do it. Our output is greater than full employment. Well, think about that for a second. If that's full employment, we have to have output over on this side, right? It's got to be greater than our full employment. So that's just letting us know that we've got an inflationary gap. And same thing we've already done. Again, we didn't need the original aggregate demand. I just wanted to make sure that we recognize that output has increased. That's Y1, that's PL1. I would never have drawn that first original, and I'm just going to get rid of it now. We didn't have to draw that. Doesn't really help or add anything to our graph. Actually, it makes it a little sloppier if later on we need to draw some other things. So here we are with our inflationary gap. And we can see our outputs increase, price levels increase, YF, check, Y1, PL1. We drew aggregate demand, long-run aggregate supply, and short-run aggregate supply. And that's it. Those are our inflationary gaps. You should be able to draw off the top of your head long-run equilibrium, which we did again and again today, right? At equilibrium, everything lines up. You should be able to draw an inflationary gap just off the top of your head, because as you see, they like to ask it. You should be able to draw that recession. That's asked most. Whereas I have 5 long-run equilibrium FRQs and maybe 5 inflation, I have probably 25 to 30 where they start you off in a recession. So this is heavily, heavily tested. Then we have some stagflation. I think not many, but a few stagflation graphs. And I don't think we have any what we would call short-run growth or positive supply shocks. If that doesn't make any sense to you, that's fine. Look forward in videos coming out, and we'll do these to make sure. This one's going to take a little bit of time, and I have to go do some tutoring, so I have to run away from you guys. You're great. Understand if you need me, you can send me an email, no matter where you are in the world, wcwaugh@aol.com. Don't laugh at my AOL account. It's older than you are. All right, be safe. Take care. Good job today. Bye.